Before the missionaries came, before borders were drawn on maps, before the Bible or the Quran arrived in West Africa, the Yoruba people had their own world, their own gods, their own powerful belief system. Today we uncover what the Yoruba believed before colonization. Long before modern Nigeria was formed, the Yoruba lived in organized kingdoms like Ile-Ife, Oyo, and Ijebu. To them, the world was not just physical. It was spiritual, deeply spiritual. At the top of everything was Olódùmarè, the supreme creator. He was the source of all energy and life. But Olódùmarè didn't interfere with human matters directly. Instead, he worked through Orisha, divine messengers and forces of nature. The Orisha were not just gods, they were forces of nature, ancestors and spirits, each with unique powers. Sango, god of thunder and lightning. Yemoja, goddess of the river and motherhood. Ogun, god of iron, war and craftsmanship. Oya, goddess of wind and transformation. Eshu, the trickster and divine messenger between gods and man. Each Orisha was honored with songs, rituals, food offerings, and fear. Yoruba people believed life didn't end at death. They saw life as a cycle, birth, death, and reincarnation. Children were sometimes believed to be reincarnated ancestors returning to guide their families. There were even names like Babatunde, meaning father has returned. To understand the spirit world, the Yoruba turned to Ifa divination. The Babalawo, a spiritual priest, used sacred palm nuts and chains to read messages from Orunmila, the Orisha of wisdom. No decision, marriage, war, business was made without consulting Ifa. Spirituality was woven into everyday life. Every town had sacred groves, shrines, and temples. Festivals like the Gungun masquerade honored ancestors. The air filled with drumming, chains, and colorful spirits dancing through the streets. These were not just parties, they were portals to the spirit world. In Yoruba belief, moral behavior wasn't just about right or wrong, it was about cosmic balance. Breaking taboos called Ewo didn't just offend society, it offended the Orisha and disrupted harmony. Stealing, lying, or disrespecting elders were more than sins. They could attract spiritual punishment, sickness, misfortune, or spiritual disconnection. That's why character called Iwapele was so important. A gentle, respectful soul was the highest spiritual achievement. Yoruba people protected themselves spiritually, not just physically. They used Ewu protective charms and Aure blessings crafted by herbalists and priests. Some were worn as necklaces or buried under houses. Others were spoken, words with power, known as Oro Aga. Every object carried energy. Even a stone or a feather could become a spiritual weapon or shield. Nature wasn't just background. It was sacred space. Mountains, rivers, forests, each had a spirit. Many were homes to specific Orisha. Oshun lived in rivers, Ogun in iron-rich forests, or Batala on hills and high places. Cutting down the wrong tree, stepping into a sacred grove without permission, these weren't just mistakes. They were spiritual crimes. Long before hospitals, the Yoruba had Onishegun, herbalists. But they weren't just doctors. They were spiritual scientists. They mixed herbs not just for the body, but for the soul, to remove curses, to attract love, to restore balance. Healing wasn't just physical, it was energetic. And knowledge was passed in secret, from master to apprentice, generation to generation. To Yoruba people, music was divine language. The gangan, or talking drum, could mimic human speech. It was used to summon gods and to awaken spirits. Songs were not just entertainment, they were invocations. Every Orisha had specific rhythms, dances, and songs. To dance was to worship. To drum was to speak to heaven. Even silence had meaning. At the core of Yoruba belief is a force called Ashe. It's not just power, it's the ability to make things happen. Spoken words, prayers, rituals, even thoughts all carry Ashe. When someone says Ashe after a prayer, they're not just agreeing, they're activating the words, giving them energy to become real. Ashe is in all things, but it must be used wisely. When European missionaries and colonizers arrived, they didn't just take land, they attacked belief. Temples were destroyed, mosques were burned, Orisha were called demons. The sacred was replaced with shame. Priests were silenced. Children were taught to forget. But the Yoruba spirit refused to die. It survived. In secret, in whispers, in dreams, in rhythm. And today, it's waking up. What the Yoruba believed before colonization wasn't mythology. It was reality. A different way of seeing the world. The gods never vanished. The ancestors never left. The sacred never died. It simply waited for us to listen again. How did the war begin? In Yoruba cosmology, it began with Olódùmarè, who sent Obatala to create the earth. Using sand, iron, and a cockerel, Obatala molded land from the waters of chaos. He then shaped humans from clay, giving them form. Olódùmarè gave them life. It's a story of balance, intention, and divine order, where even the elements obeyed the gods. Unlike many ancient systems, Yoruba belief empowered women. They weren't just followers, they were leaders. Women served as Iyalorisa, high priestesses, herbalists, diviners, keepers of sacred knowledge. Goddesses like Yemoja, Oya, and Oshun showed that femininity was divine power, fierce, nurturing, and deeply mystical. In Yoruba cosmology, balance between male and female forces was sacred. One could not exist without the other. During slavery, millions of Yoruba were taken to the Americas, but their beliefs came with them. In Brazil, they became candomblé. In Cuba, Santeria. In Haiti, Vodun. The names changed. The songs changed. But the Orisha remained. Yemoja became Yemaya. Sango became Chango. Eshu became Elegua. Yoruba spirituality survived through resistance, hidden behind Catholic saints, masked by colonial fear. But the fire never went out. To the Yoruba, art was not decoration, it was sacred expression. Masks were used to channel ancestors. Sculptures held the presence of gods. Even everyday items were designed with spiritual meaning. The spiral, the face, the eye, all were codes. To see Yoruba art is to see a language of the spirit. The art wasn't signed by man, it was signed by the divine. What the Yoruba believed before colonization wasn't mythology, it was reality. A different way of seeing the world. The gods never vanished. The ancestors never left. the sacred, never died. It simply waited for us to listen again. If this journey moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. The spirit lives on. This is Lost Realms Archive, where forgotten worlds come back to life.